Good morning. How is everybody? This is Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from Flyover. Robert Phoenix, that's me, the heretical Essene, the Atlantean anarchist. What's happening out there? Wow, Easter weekend. Very intense time, very intense energies over the weekend. And needless to say, yours truly had some of that intensity come his way, shine in his direction. I don't want to get into the details. I don't want to get into the weeds. But let me just say, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here. We're going to talk about, there's a lot happening in the world. As always, we're going to recap some of the things that happened over the weekend and some of the events that are literally coming our way from south of the border. Apparently, there is a massive caravan that's being essentially weaponized coming up from Central America. Again, one of the things that I got into last week is nothing, and I mean very little, is actually organic. Most events, most movements, most tides of people, ideas, trends. I'm not going to say consciousness because it doesn't always include consciousness. Most of these things are generated by third parties. And one doesn't have to look any further than what happened during the 1960s post-Kennedy MK Ultra, not just on an individual level where people were taken many instances at a very young age and traumatized, programmed, had their brains split into compartments, compartmentalized consciousness. That went on an individual level, but also on a collective level. The 1960s were one big MK Ultra experiment in hijacking our consciousness, in hijacking the astrological aspects that were available during that time. That was an incredibly high time. We had a Pluto-Uranus conjunction. People don't understand how rare that is. We had a Uranus-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn, and then later in Aquarius. And we're not going to be, well, let me just think about this now. Uranus, no. It's going to be a while before we get even close to anything remotely resembling a conjunction because of the outer planets. Neptune is in Pisces, and Uranus is currently in Aries, the final degrees of Aries. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, and some of the clues that we're getting now, and some of the major pitfalls of Uranus and Taurus coming in our direction. We've got a lot to cover today. And I apologize for not being on the live stream last night. I just have to say it was a very heavy weekend for me. And I had a lot to take in, let's just say, yesterday. And I'll talk a little bit about that today to some extent. because I can't talk about all of it. So these are very interesting times. Very, very interesting times. Consciousness, movements, social change, causes, they are rarely organic. Rarely. The spark, the organic spark might be there, but that spark is quickly fanned into a flame and is a controlled burn in many instances. And clearly, that's what's taking place in Central America. People are being organized in Central America. They're being given money. They're being given incentives. They're basically being told, hey, you're going to get to the United States. And who knows who and what is going to be a part of this wave. We don't know. We could be getting, I think, what is it? It's about 1,500, 2,000 people. I've actually heard figures that are higher than that, more people involved. We don't know what we're going to get. We could be getting 1,000 MS-13 people crashing the border. We could be getting people from other countries crashing the border. And this is, we're looking at now, I'm going to try to segment this out so you can see what's happening. We are now moving into a stage of chaos. Very significant chaos, more than we've had in the past year. And Mars is in Capricorn right now, and it's going to transit into Aquarius, and that is going to set the stage for what I feel is a spring and summer of intensity, chaos, change, rebellion, some outward show of revolution. I mean, the energies are mounting now. They are colliding and they're cascading, and I'm going to do my best to break it down so you can see what's adding into this collective cyclotron that at some point we may not necessarily be able to control. Now, the outside forces who are stirring the pot, theoretically, they think they can control it at some point. When they have achieved maximum destabilization, they can do one of two things. They can change the message and therefore calm the situation, reverse the trend if they need to. If they need to reward the public with some kind of psychic relief, they'll do it. But not now. Now the volume is going to get turned up. Okay? It's going to get turned up. So get ready. I'm going to break it down today. I'm going to show you what's going on so that you can begin to take a deep breath, maybe 2 or 3 deep breaths, step back, and then be able to navigate through this period. It's going to be fairly chaotic and fairly intense. So let's start at the top. My experience, let me just say this. I had a number of different experiences this weekend, a number of different insights, and in my personal life. And my personal life is, in many cases, a springboard towards something beyond my personal life. That's the way it's always been. I deal in the personal. And I had a lot of insights this weekend about some of them were good, and some of them I had to deal with some shadow material. This is what happens during this time of year. It's a very powerful time of year. Whether or not you're a Christian or whether you're a pagan, this is a very powerful time of year because this time of year supports growth. Growth. And sometimes growth can be painful. Just think, put your consciousness into a seed. And think of a seed having to, catch that spark of vibration and light coming from above and coming up from below and supercharging that seed, and the water becoming the alchemical fusion for that seed to blend with all the other elements and crack open and push up through the earth. I mean, yeah, I think it's intense, and I think it's not an easy process. Think of the young species that are born during this time of year. Some of them don't make it. By the way, there's a great documentary on Amazon called Chicken People. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It's about people who raise show chickens. They're the equivalent of the people that do the dog shows, the Westminster. And apparently their big show is in Ohio. Focuses on three main people, and they're very quirky. All three of these people, you would imagine, right? People that raise show chickens, not your typical average American. And then they have a few other kind of like satellite people that are associated with the people that are raising the chickens, but also just random interviews with other chicken aficionados. But you can see it in this movie where there are chicks that don't make it. You know, when they breed these chickens, there are chicks that don't make it. And at one point, one of the chicken breeders has to bury a little chick. She's quite sad about this whole event. That's the nature of growth. This is what happens during the spring. And and nature is amazing in this way. Because not every seed will sprout, not every seed will grow, not every chick will hatch, not every puppy or every kitten makes it to somebody's home. And so nature essentially programs this in so that there is volume and there's the potential for the next generation based on numbers to have a life and then continue on to the next generation, so on and so on and so on. And I suppose that what happens during that process where the seed won't crack and sprout and grow, or the chick won't hatch and grow, or the runt of the litter doesn't make it, that's nature's way of also culling. I mean, I'm not talking, this is not rocket science here. Okay? So what I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to get to this point, but I wanted to relate this to awakening, because awakening is difficult. It is a difficult process, and we have to use, because once that seed sprouts, I'm going to continue with this kind of line I'm working on. Once that seed sprouts, you got to protect that seed. You got to protect that sprout. You have to nurture it. And you got to keep the weeds away and the vermin away so it actually has a chance. I mean, this is the metaphor for raising something, whether it's a plant or a chick or a child. This is where we come in. And the plant and the chick and the child are outside manifestations. They're outside experiences. But the plant and the chick and the child is also us. So we have to be vigilant about the type of growth that we're going through. And we literally have to guard that growth like a mother hen or a mother wolf or a mother lion. Because if you don't, you know what will happen? People will come in and they'll stomp all over your shit if you allow them. And if you go back and listen to the show, the fantastic show that Steve and Chris and myself did on Friday, there is a passage in the State that Chris read. It was that piece from Nietzsche. But basically, Nietzsche, vis-a-vis Zarathustra, says, guess what? You will want to do something different. You will want to not succumb to the crushing, soul-shattering power of the state. And guess what? You will. You will. And this is what happens to us, even to the best of us, even to me. Okay? There are times in our lives where we have these moments where we are confronted with our essential nature, and there are times when we wind up capitulating. Okay, we wind up capitulating, and this was part of a big lesson for me this last weekend. So I was going through my own process and certain levels of capitulation that I've had in my personal life. Nothing that is, tremendously devastating, but, I went back and said, well, what did I do here? What did I do here? What did I do here? And how does this line up with how I show up here every single day when I talk on this medium? Does it align? Because that's vital for me. It's vital for me. You may not have a daily stream or daily podcast, but it should also be vital for you. How do you align? And look, here's what happens. There is a part of us that we have to really deal with. Really deal with. And when it comes to that moment where we have to face the state, there's something fundamental that has to shift. And I'm not talking about the state of the United States, although that's a manifestation of it. One of the things that was interesting about that conversation was, it's like, okay, so here's Nietzsche. He's talking about a modality of consciousness. And he uses the word creators. He doesn't use creator, he uses creators. And we talked about that a little bit. And Steve had some, of course, sage insight into what he thought that meant. For me, what I thought, or how that hit me, was that creators represented a group of people who, for lack of a better term, sealed off the exits of our consciousness at a time when I do believe we were created. At a time that I believe that we were genetically manipulated and modified. And we had the DNA, and the DNA was two parallel strands, right? There were two parallel strands of code. Two parallel strands of code. Back in the day, if you ever looked at audio tape, magnetic audio tape, like they had 2-track, 4-track. Let's go to 2-track. 2-track, basically cassette. Right? It was a cassette. Where 2-track was a reel-to-reel. You got into 4-track, right? 4-track tape, which was is an outlier. But if you look at the tape, you would see, like if you would see a little band of magnetic stripping on that tape, and that magnetic stripping was where the information was. And it was one continuous band, 2-track, 2 continuous bands. And what happened to our DNA is that those 2 continuous bands, the magnetic recording of who we are at a genetic level got twisted off. And so we have the intertwining strands of the double helix. That's what happened. That is what happened. And we are entangled. We are entangled in our genetic mystery and our genetic predisposition. And when we untangle that, we will free ourselves. We will free ourselves. Because inside of there is everything. Everything. Everything about you, everything about me, it's all inside. And all the way back to our earliest ancestors, genetically, inside of there are the keys to transcend this theater of demiurges. And that's where I think a lot of our inner work has to move towards, is the untangling of that entanglement. And that is not an easy thing to do. So this leads me into my epiphany for the weekend, which I'm going to share. And then we're going to get into the chaos stuff, which is pretty significant. My epiphany this weekend is there are a lot of unhealed healers running around. A lot of unhealed healers. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be perfect to heal somebody. There are dentists who are quite good at their work and can fix you up real well. If you've got an abscess or a bad tooth or whatever. And I'll bet you that in many cases, the dentist who works on your teeth does not have perfect teeth. Guarantee you. Guaranteed. Now, if we can take this analogy into medicine, it would be great if a doctor was healthy. It would be great if the therapist was healthy. And when I talk about healthy, I don't talk about being healed and perfect. I don't think that that's how it works. I think the open wound, we get into chiron, the chironic wound, it allows us to stay open. And one of the definitions of open in my vocabulary is humility. Humility. Humility keeps us open. Humility is not about running around in hair shirts and whipping ourselves and saying that, that we're not worthy. This is not humility. Humility is a state of openness. And in a state of openness, guess what we have? We have the ability to enter into another through the wound. But here's the deal. You got to be above baseline. You've got to be above baseline. And the higher above baseline that you are, if you are doing some kind of healing work, the better and more effective you'll be. If you're below baseline and you're trying to help people or you're trying to be a healer in this world, just shut it down. You're not helping anybody. You are not helping anybody. And in fact, what you're doing is you're making things worse. You're making things worse. And you will know. You will, if you are really aligned with who you are, you will listen to what I have to say or what I'm sharing with you, and you will know. If you check in, you say, you know what, I've worked on a lot of stuff. And I'm not perfect, but I've gotten to a point where I'm available. I've lived through my pain. And I can address certain situations based on the pain and the wounding that I've experienced, but I'm not living in that. It is open, but I'm not living in that. This is not my baseline. And I encountered two experiences this weekend where people who are beyond wounded healers, they are damaged healers. Damaged healers. And they are in the public in two different situations. They're in the public, one actually being certified by the state of Texas. Okay? Certified by the state of Texas. Damaged goods. Completely damaged goods. Has no business doing the work. None whatsoever. The other, a public figure, has a YouTube show and is trying to spread the gospel of truth. Okay? And this is a person who has said that they are a victim of MK Ultra programming and struggles with their MK Ultra programming. Well, I'll tell you what, here's the memo. Stop spreading the truth. If you are struggling with so-called MK Ultra programming, you're doing the rest of us a disservice. Because whether or not it's real, a lot of people love to have that backstory. Oh, I was traumatized. Oh my God, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And I was a super soldier, and I was taken down to a base, and da-da-da-da-da. Look, some of that stuff is real. But you want to get instant credibility? I mean, that was another part of this Chiron and Pisces thing. It wasn't just this, hashtag strong generation. fill in the hashtag blank strong, hashtag victim strong. No, you can see that in the alternative media. You can see it. You can see it in the quote unquote truth community. Oh, I was traumatized, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and now I've got all these superpowers, but I don't know what to do with myself, but I want to help. Somebody turned me on to Teal Scott the other day. I've seen Teal Scott like when I did the Living Expo show a couple years ago. I saw Teal Scott on the program. I was like, who is this person? Another one of these pretty new age faces. Look at me. So pretty. Pretty new age face. But I didn't think much of who Teal Scott was. So my friend says, "Oh yeah, she was abducted when she was young, and she was part of a sex cult up in Idaho." I'm like, okay, well, sounds interesting. Let me check her out. So I started to dig around with Teal Scott, and nothing screams fraud like somebody who has a past that doesn't match up to who they are. Here's somebody who is piggybacking on trauma-based conditioning and telling people that through her trauma-based conditioning, well, one of the reasons why she was traumatized is that she's from Arcturus, and she has all these secret powers or superpowers. So they wanted to control. I mean, it's the mythology. You look her up, and it's like this is a person who has used this notion of the wound, but it's a sensational wound. It's not just like I was knocked around a lot by my father when I was a kid, or oh yeah, my mother was a raging alcoholic and she left the family and left us alone, or my mother died when I was 8 years old. That's kind of boring stuff. Now, who's going to listen to that? Because we've all had that. Take it up 2 or 3 levels. I was a member, and so some of the stuff does happen. I was a member of a sex cult. And through that, I have superpowers. And yes, I'm pretty. Don't hate me for it. It's because my Arcturian teachers that I speak with on the 5th dimensional level on a daily basis have told me that being beautiful is a way to bring more people to the truth. This is what happens. It's a glorification of victimization, and victimization as a backstory towards a personal mythology. That's an unhealed healer. And in fact, she's doing people damage. And in fact, she's done damage. Apparently, she was counseling somebody. Heaven help us. This is a woman that was suicidal. Deep depression. Teal Scott says it's okay to commit suicide to this woman. Suicide is a valid reaction. It's a valid response. It's a valid way out. It's a valid way of ending your pain. So what does this woman do? She commits suicide. She kills herself. It's on the record. How would you feel? How would you feel if you were that person? You have somebody who's a client, and you give them some of the most irresponsible advice anybody could ever receive, and they take it. How could that person live with themselves? She's got about 4 planets in Gemini, so I think that probably helps. If you're out there and you're trying to change the world And none of us are perfect. We all have some wounds that we're walking around with. But unless you've done some serious work on yourself, and I mean really serious work, and you're like a piece of wood that's, you know, bobbing up and down in, like on, on the surface of the ocean, right? You're going up and down and up and down and up and down. You're up, you're down, you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. How is that helping us? Oh, okay. So are we supposed to learn something from your up and down? Your moments where, do us all a favor, just shut it down. And when you've healed your MK Ultra victim status, come back and start to have a real dialogue with us. Because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because if that is true, and you're struggling with this control over these various parts of who you are, and you're trying to set us straight and bring an enlightened perspective to our conversation and dialogue, you're compromised. You are compromised. And you're doing everybody a disservice. Just shut it down. Work on yourself. But that's not too glamorous, is it? It's not too glamorous. What would happen if I stopped? This is not glamour for me. It's not glamorous. I get up and I do it every day. It's like my lunch pail. I see this as blue collar work in a lot of ways. This is what I do. And I don't have like some glamorous backstory. No, I was raised in a family, small family, and not under, at times, very extreme circumstances, some of which most of us have experienced at one point in time or another, some of which maybe even worse, okay? I didn't grow up on Leave It to Beaver. It was not my reality, not even close. But I know other kids, other people who have had far worse experiences. So, this is not a glamorized mythologization of me and who I am in this experience. I'm just telling you, this is my experience this weekend. Unhealed healers in the world. And they're dangerous. They're dangerous. They're dangerous to themselves and they're dangerous to other people. And they don't even realize it. They don't even recognize it. And if you sat down with them and you basically stripped away their premise for doing what they do, you stripped away the facade, you stripped away the motivation, it'd be interesting to see what was left. It'd be very interesting to see what was left. Oh, boy. Life's a trip, huh? Total trip. So let's recap some of the bigger stories. Oh, before I do that, I was working on my place yesterday. Just trying to get it together. My new place. Trying to get it together. It's coming along. It's a lot of rearranging, a lot of going through things, sifting through the past. Need it, not. Need it, not. Do I need this? No. It's like, what do you do? This is an interesting question. Okay. What do you do with the picture that's like, I don't know, when was that taken? 1994, I think. 34 years old, this picture, right? 94, 2004. Yeah, 34 years old. And it's me, and it's with a woman I dated for a very brief period of time. Nice person, super nice person. and we had a road trip one time in Washington, and there was a picture of, I don't even know how we got it. I think we might have set it up on a timer or something. This is, of course, pre-digital. Me and her and my dog, and it's framed. And I'm like, what do you do with that? What do you do with that picture? It's like, do I keep this picture? Because this person doesn't even, it's not really even a part of my life, even in a meaningful way in the present. I had to look at that picture. Why should I keep this picture? Well, first of all, I looked a lot younger then, obviously. Like, oh boy, well, times have changed. There's a picture of my dog. So I kept the picture because my dog is in the picture. And not the person, because the person was a nice person, don't get me wrong. And we had a lot of chemistry. But I said, I'm going to keep this because my dog is in this picture. It's funny how we make these decisions in our life. Anyway, I was watching yesterday. I decided I don't want to watch any news. I don't want to watch any YouTube videos. I want to listen to music, but I also want to have kind of a visual thing going on. Like I wanted to see concerts on my TV. So I found this channel. You can find it, by the way. It's on YouTube. When I was a kid growing up, I used to watch late night music shows, and there were 3 of them. There was Burt Sugarman's Midnight Special. I believe Burt Sugarman was involved with the Monkees, the creation of the Monkees. Burt Sugarman's Midnight Special. There was In Concert. And then there was Don Kirshner's Rock Concert. Don Kirshner was definitely involved with the Monkees. He helped create the Monkees. Anyway, so I decided I wanted to watch episodes of the Midnight Special, which was House by Wolfman Jack, baby. Here's the Wolfman. And so I found this channel on YouTube, and it's like 229 or 23 performances from the Midnight Special. So we're talking about 70s to 80s. Early 70s to late 70s, early 80s. And it's amazing how many, and they're like plucking 1 or 2 maybe per show. So I time traveled through the Midnight Special yesterday. It's a Mercury retrograde. And it was really a trip, I have to say. It was really a time trip. And kind of the amazing thing about that, number one, is that there's a type of music we're never going to see again. Never. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. And I'm not rhapsodizing over my past and, as I wasn't this great. Because some of the stuff from the 70s, I did not like growing up. Like, I loathed soft rock. Loathed it. Not a fan. Wasn't a fan of the folksy stuff in many cases. I was living with Uranus on my ascendant in California, and that didn't fly. But you look back on it, and some of those performers are actually quite talented, very talented. And we're never going to see that again. I'm not necessarily sad about that, but we're never going to see that again. It was really funny. If you watch the sequence, if you find this channel, it's all sequenced. The first video you'll see will be Manfred Mann's Earth Band, Blinded by the Light. Early on in the sequence, you'll run across Ike and Tina Turner doing Proud Mary. And it's electric. It is electric. Like, Beyonce is theoretically the new Tina Turner. If you watch her, she's robotic. Talking about MK Ultra programming. Holy smokes. It's like, flip the switch, she gets on the stage and, she's possessed, and she even talks about it. She becomes Sasha Fierce. And off the stage, who knows who Beyonce is? Does she ever talk to anybody? Does she ever do interviews? No. I'll tell you why. There's probably not a lot going on in there. And I've seen her courtside at the New Jersey Net games, basically having conversations with herself and singing to herself and very bizarre behavior. There's a video out there where she's doing that, and Jay-Z's looking at her going, what the hell is going on with her? Tina Turner is the original Beyonce, and there's no comparison. Now, Tina Turner had her own MK Ultra programming at the hands of Ike Turner, who was more of a pimp, a musical pimp than a handler, and that's a fact, Jack. But it wasn't perhaps as intentional, let's just say, with Beyonce. Anyway, Ike and Tina Turner, Proud Mary, electric. I put that performance against any performance in contemporary music right now, smokes it. And then right after that is the Starland Vocal Band singing Afternoon Delight. Are you kidding me? It's like, this was the 70s in a nutshell. You've got women who look like they just came off the prairie. They just came off the prairie. They're from Colorado, I believe, the Starland Vocal Band. Sky rockets in flight. Wow. Afternoon delight. I mean, they're talking about sex in the afternoon. And it's so, like, you know, approachable and white bread. And, oh, yeah, yummy. Yummy. We're going to have a little afternoon delight, honey. We're going to have a little afternoon delight. Would you like some afternoon delight? Yes, dear. This is delightful. And then you've got Tina Turner. Sometimes we like to do it nice and soft. But other times we like to do it nice and rough. And the rough part was intense, man. Those girls dance with Tina. Amazing. That was the 70s. That was diversity. Right? And it was all on one show. Nobody carped about it. It was like, okay, great. Starland Vocal Band, Ike and Tina Turner, Sky Rockets in Flight. Proud Mary keeps on burning. I mean, it was just the way it was. We're never going to see this music again. And I really cued in on it when I was watching the OJs do For the Love of Money. And the main ingredient, everybody plays the fool. Great song, by the way. Great song. And you have this guy with this amazing voice, and these guys are up there singing, and they're doing moves. We're never going to see that again. Never. Never. Like, if you go back to that time and look backwards into the musical canon, like the equivalent in terms of cultural disparity was like the Mills Brothers compared to the OJs. Okay, that's how like the Mills Brothers, very nice sounding group, but you know, it's just like the Mills Brothers. You have the OJs, like they're badasses. You know, they was like, you know, doing moves and singing, and now it's like you've got the OJs and whatever's out there now, which is not always that impressive. It's like hip hop. I'm going to sound like Clint Eastwood, Gran Torino. Hip hop has killed music. It has fucking killed music. And there's some hip hop I like, don't get me wrong. I think Kendrick Lamar is really gifted and talented. I think some of the people like Frank Ocean that came out of that Southern California weird hip hop scene with Tyler the Creator, I think he's really, really talented. I think some interesting things have come out of sort of, and I've heard some modern hip hop, which is actually pretty good. But by and large, hip hop has fucking killed music. I'm sorry. Yes, there we go. There it is. I said it. Oh, man. Here's another interesting thing about the Midnight Special. Beyond the fact that there was just what I would call unplanned diversity, because it was unplanned. It was just happening. There was no social programming like, well, let's give them this. Although I will have to say that I did notice something very unusual watching the arc of the show. And it had to do with two singers from Australia. And I had to ask myself, was this planned? Because at that time, it was like Australian music wasn't really big. Wasn't big. I think, what wasn't the band Argent from Australia? I think so. Don't quote me, but I think Rod Argent is from Australia. Anyway, they're on there. Hold Your Head High. It was a huge hit. But I noticed these two women from Australia that were engaged in duality. Who were they? Olivia Newton-John and Helen Reddy. And it was like so clear. Helen Reddy, by the way, this might be the interesting programming piece for the Midnight Special. Helen Reddy, like they would have like the host of the show, and I think they would run certain people through there, and they would like introduce the acts for the whole night. And Helen Reddy was a mainstay on the Midnight Special, and outside of like one, maybe two hits, Helen Reddy was not a musical powerhouse, but they positioned her from a cultural perspective to be the MC of the show. And so she was a woman, and I'm not saying that it's not cool to be a woman and be an MC of the show. It's not what I'm saying. She was a woman, and she was a liberated woman. She was a liberated woman. I am woman, hear my call, right? That was a clarion call. That's what you associated with Helen Reddy, and you saw her every Friday night or thereabouts, because she didn't host it all the time, a Midnight Special, because she toured and she had her own career, right? But you're going to sleep, and here you see Helen Reddy, who is iconic, and is really, because you're watching this at the end of the night. Many times I fell asleep during the Midnight Special. Here's Helen Reddy coming into your consciousness. Here she is, the icon, the icon, the icon. But she was engaged in a form of duality with Olivia Newton-John, who was also at that time a contemporary artist from Australia. And she was the anti-Helen Reddy. Olivia Newton-John just wants to be submissive. All she wants to do is be there. Let me be there in your morning. Let me be there in your night. Right? That was one of her songs, a big hit. And it has a gospel feel to it. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to be my savior. Or while she's being there, she can be mellow. Have you ever been mellow? Another big hit for Olivia Newton-John. Clearly, this is a very different message of, I am woman, hear me roar. I am invincible. Ooh. So is that programming? Is that what they were doing? Okay, here's one, here's the other, here's the duality. Yeah, it's part of the game. It's definitely part of the game. It's really fascinating going back in time and watching the show, seeing what was going on culturally, what was happening. The whole wave of comedians. The comedians were kind of a big part of the Midnight Special, and some of them were funny. David Steinberg, I think, is actually very underrated funny. He was pretty funny. I don't think I appreciated David Steinberg when I was young. To me, he was like just another kind of, I'm sorry, drippy, in parentheses, very self-conscious, neurotic Jewish comedian. David Brenner, David Steinberg, Robert Klein. I kind of lumped them all together, although Robert Klein is very sharp and sort of acerbic. But Jimmy Walker from Good Times did a comedy bit. I'm like, man, this is really bad. Really, really bad. And I thought people thought that this was funny back then. It was a bad bit. I mean, he was really, people make fun of themselves. There's a style of comedy where you make fun of yourself, and it's kind of self-deprecating in a painful way. It's like pathos. You point things out. It's pathos. You can laugh at it, and that's a healing process. But then there's a point where it's like, oh man, we talked about he was going to become a game show host on a new show for black people called Bowling for Watermelons. I'm like, wow, come on, JJ, raise the vision a little here, brother. Fascinating to see this stuff in the Midnight Special. Some of the music was good. A lot of it was really good. Some of the direction, not so good. Strange direction. Anyway, I've gone down that path. I recommend it. It's 223 Midnight Special episodes. And it'll take you back in time. You will see a very different version of the world. And not just America, but the entire world. It's an international show. And that's only a smattering of the performances that were on the Midnight Special. All right, shall we get into the chaos? Let's get into the chaos. We got a comment here. What do we have? Old chatty room. What do we got? Sound like it is. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Judy. I do my best to tell it like it is. Shall we get into the chaos? All right. Let's do a little recap here. Over the weekend, David Hogg managed to take down two more people. Laura Ingraham is taking the week off because 11 sponsors have jumped ship because she made little David Hogg's life miserable. She criticized him because he couldn't get into college with some schools on the West Coast. Boo fucking who? Boo hoo. The government and the corporate state are entwined. They have been for a very long time. It was hidden. It was hidden in plain sight in 2009 after the crash, when all of a sudden, oh, let's buy GM. Oh, let's buy AIG. Oh, let's invest in Solyndra and money launder through Solyndra. It's always been that way. Always. Always. It was just bold, in your face, revelation of the method, circa 2009, 2010. And it hasn't changed or abated since then. But now we see all these companies virtue signaling. Well, we're not going to support this. Fuck these companies. Fuck them. You know? It's ridiculous. I unsubscribed to these companies over the weekend. By the way, some of these companies are very hard to unsubscribe to their mail letters. It's like fungus. They just don't go away. And I sent tweets to the CEOs of these companies. And I said, listen, I'm not supporting your company. And this is not like in defense of like Fox News or Laura Ingraham. You know, it's like, I think, by the way, I'm not sure Laura Ingraham is organically who she says she is. Just my opinion. Bit of a theory I have about the woman. That's beside the point. No, I'm not here, but here's what I am here, and what I did, or why I did what I did. It's because it's fucking bullying. Right? Oh, we're gonna bully you. We're gonna gang up and bully you. We're gonna get behind this kid. Oh, we feel so bad. Well, if you feel so fucking bad for David Hogg, why doesn't Wayfair, why doesn't TripAdvisor, Why doesn't Nestle just pony up and give the goddamn kid a scholarship to one of these schools? If George W. Bush could get into Harvard, or Jared Kushner could get into some Ivy League school because his father has money and connections, you would think that one of these CEOs at one of these brilliant companies who represent the rest of us couldn't make a phone call or two and make a donation in David Hogg's name. Wouldn't that be maybe a more appropriate response than all jumping on this bandwagon and saying, fuck you, we're not going to support you, we're going to ruin your career, and we're going to send a signal to everybody else out there who dares cross the path of Lord Hogg? Could have been very quiet. Send a little message to Lord Hogg and his parents. So we got this. We got this. We got it. We know people. I know a guy who knows the chancellor at UCLA, communications journalism department. Don't worry about it. He's in. And next thing you know, David Hogg is living his dream as a journalist. But no. What are they going to do? They're going to make Laura Ingraham. They're going to make her into a scapegoat. They're going to crucify her. And it all happened just as Easter was getting ready to move into, and I don't care if you think it's about the Oester or Ishtar. I don't care. Or the change of seasons. I mean, it's all part of it, right? But there is a social and historical and energetic canon that's associated with this time. A mythopoetic canon. And so Laura Ingraham was crucified. She was crucified because she said something about David Hogg that was unkind. She pointed out the fact he was turned down for a number of applications for schools. So this is a really important thing to understand. Number one, if you're in the media, you cannot take that kid on directly. You'll lose your fucking job. Okay? Number two, if there's anything, if we have any skin in this game, and we want to stop that train, you got to get to the people behind David Hogg. If you want to stop this train, you got to get to the Michael Bloombergs and the George Soroses and the Steven Spielbergs and the George Clooneys and the Oprah Winfreys. You got to go there. Okay? And this is where I think Trump has a bit. Trump is weird, right? He's got that Sun-Uranus conjunction. So on the one hand, he's taking on Jeff Bezos. Says he pays too much in taxes. He's going to go after him. He should register the Washington Post as a lobbying group. So he's doing that. And Trump will do that. And on the other hand, it's like, he's doing nothing. Like, if he was really, really smart, and was really engaged in cutting off the head of the snake, he would go after Steven Spielberg, he'd go after Oprah Winfrey, he'd go after George Clooney, he'd go after all these people, and he'd go after them financially. He would, hire private investigators. He would go after these people. He'd look into their financial and historical background and record and go after them. That's what would happen. But he can't. He's compromised. He can only do so many things. I think he's compromised. He's totally compromised. So David Hogg has lost his job. Oh, sorry, David Hogg has a job. It's called Antichrist. I think he filled out that application last year and was accepted. But Laura Ingraham may lose her job. If I were you, I did this. And I'm going to go back through. I never buy any Nestle products anyway. If I were you, I don't know. You can do whatever you want. I think we should send a message to these people and just unsubscribe from their emails. Unsubscribe from their emails. Send a tweet to the CEOs, which I've done. So I'm done. I'm not buying Dick's, by the way, once they decided that they were going to virtue signal and not sell a firearm to anybody under 21, but that's okay because you can go into the Army at 18 and go kill for the government. That's okay. But you can't, after 18, go buy a firearm. Ridiculous. At 18, you can vote. At 18, you can kill somebody in the name of the country, in the name of the corporation that you're fighting for. But you can't have a drink. You can't have a beer. Life is weird. Cognitive dissonance. I'm going to call it cognitive dissonance. We're living in a time of cognitive dissonance. Let them know. Fuck these people. Let them know. So that happened over the weekend. We've got the wave of 2,000 or so refugees coming up from Central America. What's that? And nobody's stopping them in Mexico. What's that going to look like when they hit the border? They did this once during the Obama administration. They had one of these caravans set up down in El Salvador, and they are trucked and bussed, and they have all this support, enabling. It's not like they just all sat around at the same time and had an idea. It's like, let's go to America. Yeah, let's go to America. Manuel's going. Rose is going. Jorge's going. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. And it spreads like wildfire. Let's go to America. No. They're encouraged. They're enabled to go. So that's a wave of chaos coming to you. We have the reanimation of Black Lives Matter now showing up in Sacramento. Some kid was vandalizing property, acting like a fool, running around. And the cops came onto the scene. And they went way too far. Way too far. I think the kid had, 7 or 8 bullet holes. He was run over. I mean, clearly a case of somebody who needed to be stopped. Right? You can't vandalize a home. Sorry, you can't do that. You can't vandalize a property. There are other ways of doing it versus pumping them full of lead and then running them over. And Sacramento has been in flames ever since. Look, the police they have their own hand in the complicit nature of events at times. And at other times, like Michael Brown, the guy was trying to take the gun away from the cop. What's the cop going to do? Oh, sure, here you go. Take my gun. Please kill me. I'm tired of my white privilege. Just end it now. Sacrifice me and crucify me for all my other white brethren. Please, Michael. No, he's going to fight for his life. He's got a wife. He's got kids. He's got a life. And it was him and Michael Brown. And he took out Michael Brown. And that's the name of that story. They got turned into a cause celeb. There are other times when the cops are in the wrong, clearly. But they use excessive force. Isn't that interesting? Like in an event like that, they'll use excessive force. But at some of the Trump rallies, like in San Jose and in San Mateo, when he was running for, they didn't use any force at all. How about the free speech riots in Berkeley? They sat around, didn't do a damn thing. But you take one guy who is being a nuisance to society, and then, they jack him up. Isn't it weird? It's just really weird. It's like they did nothing at those Berkeley when by any means necessary, and what's her name, Yvonne or Yvette Falarka, who was running that crew out there, and it was when Milo was supposed to speak at Berkeley, and they rampaged. They shattered windows. They did so much damage, not just to the school, but to merchants. And Yvette Falark said, the merchants should wake up and they should get involved. And it's like, that's extortion. It's like the next time we have somebody on campus and we don't like, you better support us, or we're going to come through here again and we're going to smash your shit again. Did you get the message? Cops didn't do anything. Nothing. Go back to what happened in Florida, that whole thing with Freddie Gray. Cops didn't do anything. Rioting, burning stores down. And their own neighborhood didn't do a damn thing. And yet, we use excessive force on one dude. And then next thing you know, it's a highly flammable situation. It's just weird. I mean, I think that there's some level of a deep, very deep social programming, like, the thin blue line. What's behind the thin blue line? I have no clue, but I'm assuming that there is a lot of lodge memberships behind the thin blue line, if you know what I'm saying. And I do know for a fact that since 9/11 happened, there's been a huge wave of training our police forces to deal with people like the IDF deals with people in Israel. And that's a fact. What is this? You never know what goes on in a new place. It's another part of the chaos. Now we got a teacher strike coming. By the way, I talked about the strikes. Sixth House, teacher strike in Oklahoma. Get ready. That's the next wave. Strikes, destabilization in the workplace. So it's like somebody's not too destabilized right now in their workplace. So that's going on. This is all mounting, right? This is all mounting. This is all energy that's mounting. That's happening. You've got the Russian event. Skripal thing just won't go away. What a joke this thing is. Holy smokes, man. People die every freaking year. People die in espionage every year. There are people who have died you'll never know about. Covert actions are rampant. But only when they want to politicize a covert action does it feel like an international event that can be the tipping point towards war. It's ridiculous. This is some of the chaos we're having to deal with. And there's more coming. We're probably going to have monetary chaos as well. China is now buying oil with the yuan, a gold-backed yuan. They're not using the dollar anymore. They're not going to use all those dollars that they have to buy oil. It's going to have an impact on our economy. You better be prepared. If you can buy silver, if you can buy gold and do it in a way that's reasonable, I'm not telling you go out and hawk everything and just live on snow. You've got to hedge your bets a little bit because there's a very good chance that the Chinese petrodollar, which is gold backed, will drive gold prices up. And as a result, silver will be carried along with the tide. So you may want to invest a little bit in that. It's another layer of the whole chaos trip, though. And that's not really being talked about a whole lot. we have the chaos that's commodified and is brought into the marketplace to destabilize you and what you think and how you feel and freeze you like a deer in the headlights. And then you have the chaos that's below the line. And that's a whole other discussion, which we don't have time for. In fact, I should probably wrap this up. I wanted to bring up this stuff with the AI, the woman who got killed by the Uber car, self-driving Uber car in Tucson, and the latest crash now involving a Tesla vehicle. I lived in the 70s. I'm time traveling, and there was a guy by the name of Ralph Nader. You may know of him. He ran for president and ruined an election. A few Democrats, the people out there who supported Al Gore and really wanted him to be president of the United States, he would have been president of the United States had Ralph Nader not ran for president and interceded. He did that. He was paid and hired to be that third-party candidate. They always bring in the third-party candidate when they want to split the vote. They tried that this last election with the Green Party candidate. But Ralph Nader was a consumer advocate, and Detroit was making bad cars. They were making really bad cars because they were being forced to rethink how they made vehicles, thanks to two things, thanks to Japan and thanks to the rising oil prices. So they started to make small cars, which was really never a part of the American auto landscape. I think the smallest American car prior to like the 1970s was the Corvair. And if you know anything about cars, you'll know that the Corvair was a complete disaster. It was a rear engine car, and it was one of those first recalls. And then in the 70s, they said, okay, well, we're going to make smaller cars, better gas mileage, but not a lot of pre-planning and pre-thought had gone into it. And you had the Pinto with the exploding gas tank in the back. It was a running joke. It was a bad joke. You had the Vega with the aluminum block engine. And a lot of cars have aluminum block engines now, but they've learned how to temper the aluminum and do all sorts of other things. But those Vegas, if they overheated, those engines would melt. And Ralph Nader was there. Ralph Nader was like, he led a lawsuit against Ford and the Pinto. Well, where's the Ralph Naders in our society now? When a Tesla explodes because it goes on autopilot. This guy was driving his Tesla and it went on autopilot. They have a version of the self-drive mode inside of a Tesla. The car took over and it crashed. And not only did it crash, but once these Teslas crash, they will burn hotter and more intensely than any combustion engine out there. Like if you've seen the pictures of this guy's car, there's hardly anything left. And it's because of the heat that is generated from the battery. I mean, Elon Musk should shut that company down. There are cars. He should recall every single Tesla. You think it's going to happen? He's in trouble, by the way. He's in big trouble financially. Tesla is subsidized by the government. We're subsidizing these piece of shit cars that take over and explode. How do you like that? And kill people. I'm sure Uber gets their subsidies. I mean, it's ridiculous. Elon Musk, the sheen is wearing off on the golden boys of Silicon Valley now, isn't it? Mark Zuckerberg is getting the perp walk. Elon Musk is, having to do the same thing. Who knows who's next? Maybe Google should just give David Hogg a job and promote him very quickly. And then he could suffer the fate of the rest of these Silicon barons. Um, Frank Stallone is another guy. He said somebody should sucker punch David Hogg. I know the feeling. He's got a face that you want to punch. I'm sorry. He just does. But you can't say that. You can't say that. Now Frank Stallone why does Frank Stallone, by the way, have to offer an apology? Does Frank Stallone have a really burgeoning career somewhere? I know he's a singer. Does he have a really hot career on the indie casino circuit? Why does he have to apologize? Why can't somebody just say, I'm not apologizing, meant what I said? Because they'll lose everything. But if somebody has nothing to lose, and it's like, I got nothing to lose, I don't have to apologize. Go ahead. Take from what I don't already have. However, ultimately, we're all vulnerable. But I just still like to have somebody say, I'm not apologizing. Screw that. Screw it. Okay, so we've gone through everything, right? We've cycled through a bunch of material today. We've cleansed. We're cleansing. This is a cleansing time. When I do this, it's like cleansing for me. It's like psychically cleansing. So after we psychically cleanse, after we remove the bad things, we need to put the good things back in. So that's what I advocate for you to do this day and every day. Purge yourself of the social toxicity. That's number one. Get clear on it as much as you can. Get clear on it. Number two, do the same thing with yourself. A bit harder. Sometimes we hide out. Sometimes we justify our actions. At the end of the day, though, if you are as awake as you'd like to be in the world, you got to use the same kind of laser focus on who you are. It's just the way it is. And sometimes that's not always easy, nor is it easy to fix, but it's an essential part of the experience. Keeps you honest. Keeps me honest. And it's work. It's work. And then after that, fill yourself up with things that are good for you. Whatever it is, whether it's, communing with nature or God or making a good meal or whatever, treating your body nice, getting a massage, working out, doing something creative. Fill that gap. Fill that void and know that you're doing it on some level. Because these invisible acts of creation are magic. These invisible acts of nurturing and caring for yourself are magic. That's the real spiritual frisson. And someday, this will be over. And it will be. Trust me, it'll be over. What's on the other side of that, I can't tell you. But it'll be over. And we'll look back in this time as being one of the most pivotal times in human history. You're a part of it. So do your part and be a participant, an active, live, awake, aware participant in your own life. All right, I'm out of here. Oh, I didn't do time. You know what? I get so wound up. This is not a great time tunnel day. Let me just tell you why. This is really interesting. I'm looking at, I read off of Wikipedia, and it's like, in 1930, after the mysterious death of Empress Zuditu, of course it's mysterious, Haile Selassie is proclaimed Emperor of Ethiopia. Haile Selassie was like the first version of Barack Obama. And then 1956. Goes from 1930 to 1956. Did nothing happen on April 2nd for 26 years? Did I miss something? So it's kind of a weird day today. Nothing really amazing happened except in 1513, Ponce de Leon discovered Florida. That's about it. Oh, 1982, Argentina invaded the Falklands. That was so weird. And you got into a war with England around it. All right, let's get on out of here. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I'll be back.